Hey everybody, my name is Miko and I am here to talk about picking the right game engine. Now I bet a lot of you are really excited after seeing InstaFluff talk about game design, so let's keep that game dev excitement. What the heck is incitement? There we go. Alright, I had my first flub, so hopefully I won't have any more during this talk. Let's get right into it, shall we? What is a game engine? Well, there are exceptions to every rule, but in general, a game engine is a piece of software that's used to make games. It's usually a collection of features that are necessary to make a lot of games or very common between them. Things like rendering 2D and 3D graphics, listening to audio or having audio support, player input, physics, animation, that kind of thing. There's usually some kind of user interface as well that allows you to do your game dev workflow, and it has some kind of structure for organizing your content and your code. Ideally, your game engine is going to save you time and money, be easy for you to use, and well suited for your project. And this is important because it is one of the first decisions that you're going to make at the very beginning of making a new game. Then you're probably thinking about your concept. You may be doing some art, you may be doing some design documents, some paper prototypes, but soon after you've done a lot of that work, you're going to be thinking about how you're actually going to make your game. And that's the moment where you need to think about using a game engine. And at this moment, you're thinking, okay, how am I going to get all my features done? And you'll be living with this game engine probably all the way until you ship your product. So that's why it's really important, because it has long-lasting implications on what coding language that you use and how your team is going to work together. You can change your game engine partly through production. However, it's costly to do so. You'll spend some time course correcting, and your team will have to be trained on using the new way of working, which they may not like, and will also cost time. So you may have looked at a lot of game engines. I actually saw during InstaFluff's talk that many people were recommending ones that they use, which is awesome. You may also be thinking, I've heard of these game engines, but I don't really know what the difference is between them. Or maybe you're really new to game development and you want to make a good choice, but you just don't have any preferences yet. But don't worry, I'm here to help you. I've been working with games for a long time now, maybe 8 or 9 years. I got my PhD on dance games, so I worked with them in grad school. I've been making indie games on my own, and I've also worked professionally at small studios and studios with hundreds of people in them. And through all of that, I've used a variety of game engines, including custom ones, and making games from scratch. The high-level takeaway here is that there isn't going to be an engine that's perfect for all situations. Instead, you're going to need to consider your goals and the goals for your project. Okay, so this is a little bit meta. It's a little bit about your whole production on your whole project, but it is really important to the question we're talking about. What are your goals? I mean, you can't cross the finish line if you don't know where you're going, right? So is it that you want to have fun making games, which it certainly is fun? Is it that you want to learn new skills because you want to get a job in the game industry? Or maybe you have a dream project that you've always wanted to make. You may already be on a team or a studio as well that needs to make a prototype for a client or a publisher, so there's a time constraint, or you are trying to make this your business. And these are all valid goals for making games. It's just important that you know which ones apply to you. So if you don't know this right now, that's totally fine. You could take some time to think about it, but definitely know what this is around the time that you are starting to build your project and choose your game engine. That's a good time to know. All right, so once you know your goals for your project, then you can do something that I call the game project checklist. This is a list of straightforward questions that I made, and I use them every time I start a new project. And while again, this is kind of on an overall project organization level, I use these to help inform the game engine. So we're going to talk about each of these questions, and then I'm going to tell you why they relate to how you're going to choose your game engine. What you're really wanting about this is you're wanting to know, what is the information that is important to me about this game? Do I understand everything I need for this project? And you're going to want to use this information to narrow down the number of game engine options that are available to you. The first one is, how big is your team? Are you planning to work by yourself, maybe with 1 or 2 other people, or do you have a dozen or maybe even 50 or more people on your team? If you're working by yourself, you don't need to worry as much about things like locking content so other people don't edit things while you're working, or leaving code reviews or comments on your project. But no matter what level you are, even if you're one person, having some kind of source control is still a good idea, because it allows you to make backups and it allows you to revert if things go wrong when you're making something. It just becomes a little bit more important the more people that you have on your team. This relates to your game engine because some game engines already integrate really nicely with known solutions that are very popular, such as Git and Perforce. Some game engines also offer their own version control, source control, and some won't help you with this at all. So you'll have to do some kind of workaround, and those game engines may be better suited for one-person projects. What is your technical experience? Now, I'm guessing a lot of you here at the Live Coders Conference are programmers, but programmers have different interests and different skill sets. So what languages do you like to use, and what languages would you rather avoid? If you know your skill set and you know your experience level with it, then you can really hone in on which engines use those programming languages. You also might be new to coding, and that's totally fine. It's okay if you've never done it before, and it's okay if you do code because you have to, but you don't really love to. There are game engines out there that don't require you to do any coding at all. Although with all game engines and all games that you make, it's still helpful to know how to solve problems and how to think about things as algorithms, even if you're not deep in there actually typing code yourself. Are you making a single player game or a multiplayer game? So if you're making a multiplayer game, there is a lot of features that players are going to expect to be really well made, or they'll be frustrated. They don't want to have a laggy connection on an online game, and they want to make sure that they're matchmaking well to other players. So if you don't have someone on your team that's experienced building these features, it's always nice to use a game engine that already has these features built in. Things to consider, such as having lobbies or text and voice chat, are really important. Also, if you're doing a local multiplayer game, you may need to be thinking about multiple controller support or having viewpoints, cameras on every character on the screen at the same time. Do you plan to sell your work? This is really important because it'll let you think about how much you're willing to invest to buy a game engine if it does cost money, and some of them have monthly or yearly costs as well. If you are planning to sell your work, remember the phrase commercial use. Some game engines make you pay a royalty if you sell your games. Some game engines also have legal requirements where you have to include certain license agreements. And in that case, you're just going to want to check that official documentation, look for that phrase, can I, sell these games that I make, or look for, can I offer my games commercially, that kind of thing. All right, what features does your game have? Now, of course, as you make your game, things are going to change, and you're not going to know all this at the beginning. But if you know what gameplay genre you're in, such as match 3 puzzle game or first-person shooter, then you know what kind of features that people will be expecting out of your game, and you'll know what you'll want to be making. And this is helpful because different game engines offer different gameplay features as well, already made for you. So think about things like, do you have combat in your game, and what kind of combat is it? Are there special requirements for your main character? Do they have an inventory? Do they have special ways of moving across the screen? That kind of thing. And dialogue seems simple, but it's actually quite nuanced. So if you know how you want to present dialogue to your player, or if they're going to be able to make choices in dialogue, that's really helpful too, because there's a wide variety of how dialogue is presented in different game engines. It's also good to know your user interface. If you know what kind of options that you're going to offer and you know how many menus you're going to have, then this will really help you inform the kind of features you're looking for. And finally, what platforms are you going to support? So if you know what devices you plan to offer your game on, this is really going to help you. It actually helps you focus in on your user interaction models. If you know you're going to ship a game on mobile, then you want to make sure you have great touch support. If you know you're making a PC game, you might want to support both keyboard and mouse and also controllers. So these are all really good considerations that actually help you with your design process as well. This is also helpful to know because your platform will also tell you what storefronts you'll probably be offering your game in. And different storefronts offer features such as achievements, DLC, and ad support that you may want to take advantage of. So some game engines will already know, they'll already have on there a list of what different platforms they export to, and they'll already maybe have some of these services easy for you to make right within the game engine. Okay, so now we get to the really fun part. We have our goals, so we know what we want to accomplish, and we have the questions and answers for our project. And at this point, we can start looking at game engines and put some of them to the side for a later day because they're not going to work for us, and try to narrow down that list. Now, there are so many great game engines out there that I can't cover them all, but don't worry, if there's one that's not on this list that you are considering, you just take the same approach that we're doing right now. Think about your goals and your checklist items and look at the information on the official website for the game engine you're considering and see if it'll work for you. So let's get in and just talk about some game engines. And yeah, this is going to be a little rapid fire, but I will offer these slides to you later somehow through my Discord or something. So here we go. We're going to start with easiest to approach if you're new to making games or new to coding, and then we're going to get more and more complex as we get along. And that's why we're going to start with Twine. Twine is an interactive fiction engine. It easily exports to websites, and it is based on web coding. So if you are a web programmer, there will be some really fun stuff you can do to extend this. It's great for writers, and it's really great for non-coders because it's so easy to get started. You just have to put some square brackets around a word, and it will extend into another one of these passages here. So if you're doing like a branching narrative, or you want to do some simple things like have stats and random events, Twine can do all that for you. It's also an engine that I really like to use for design documents. I often make things in Twine first so I know how many levels I need and how many menus I need, and then I move on to a more complicated engine once I have a better sense of the project I'm making. Next, we have Construct 3. I saw some people talking about this in the chat earlier. I love Construct 3. It's really accessible and easy for people to use. You can see here that they use this action and event system. So if you're not as familiar with coding, it's really easy to get started. They have really great templates. It's good for platformers and action games and puzzle games. And the engine is browser-based, so you can actually use it from any device that has a browser. Okay, Renpie. Renpie is a visual novel engine. Visual novels are narrative-focused games that have a lot of art and music and usually have branching paths with multiple endings. If you're someone who wants to tell a great story and you're more of a content creator than a coder, this is another great one for you. It's also great because the features that most visual novel fans expect are built right into Renpie, such as a save system and text history and speed options. So if you're not planning to add any unique gameplay to your visual novel, this is a great choice for you. Okay, now for something a little bit different, PicoEight. It calls itself a fantasy console, and it is a great example of empowering constraints. There's a size limit, and there is a small image size and only a few colors. And because it's limited in these ways, you can really stretch your creativity and not worry about a lot of the things you have to worry about in a more complex engine. One of the most fun things about PicoEight is that your games are stored on these PNGs, so you can actually pass these images around like you could pass around physical cartridges for a retro console. And everything you need is included in the console. There's a code editor, a pixel editor, and a chiptune music creator. Gameplay Studio. This is another great choice, especially for action games and puzzles and platformers. So if you're really interested in those types of gameplay genres, it's a good choice for you. It is using a custom language based on C, so you can also make more custom mechanics if you're doing a twist on one of those classic genres. And it has a 2D tile set editor built right in, so it's really good for sprites and doing animation right within the engine. RPG Maker. So if you're one of those people that has been looking to make your epic saga about a cast of characters roaming the land and engaging in turn-based battles with magic and swords, this is definitely the game engine for you. It'll have all the features that RPG fans expect built in, and there's a lot of customization options to it. So you'll be able to make exactly the game mechanic setup that you want out of your game. And one of the cool things about this as well, it is a 2D tile set based environment, and they offer a lot of official content packs. So if you're not much of an artist and you want to buy these packs of art and music, then you can make a game with those and not have to worry so much about the content side. Adventure Game Studio. So similar to RPG Maker, this is a game engine that's focused on one type of game, and that is those retro adventure games where your characters walk around and collect fun inventory items and combine them to solve puzzles. This has really unique types of features that aren't really shown in a lot of other game engines because they're so specific to this genre. So being able to, for example, map out an area on that background to show where the floor is and where the character can walk. So this is really great if you know that this is the type of game that you want to make. Okay, so now we have gotten to the 3D game engines, and we're going to be diving into Godot, Unity, and Unreal, and I hear the most about these when I'm doing my live streams. So there are a lot of things that are similar between them, but there are some slight differences. And let's start with Godot. This one is, not as well known as Unity and Unreal, but I'm hearing more and more about it all the time. And I think why people are really excited about Godot, first of all, is it is free and open source with no royalties planned. So they're planning to let you always make games with Godot for free and never owe them any money. It is crowdfunded through Patreon, so I think people are really excited that the community supports this engine. And one thing that's really cool about it too is you don't have to compromise what game programming language that you want to use, because it does support several of the more popular programming languages. So this is definitely one that's worth a look. It is newer than the other two we're going to talk about, but they do have a roadmap, and if you don't mind waiting for it, it's a really great option for 2D and 3D games. Okay, Unity. So Unity is a very popular engine that is used by indies, and it's also used by professional studios. This is a great choice for you if you're interested in shifting your career into game development. This is an engine that people will be excited to see on your resume that you know how to use. And it has a large asset store that's just full of plugins and content, and there are tons of tutorials out there. So pretty much no matter what type of game that you want to make, there's going to be some guide or some help for you to make it with Unity. So it's just something to think about. Some of the earlier engines that we looked at were really specific to a gameplay genre, but Unity goes in a much more general approach. The things that make it specifically different from Unreal, which are often compared, is that it uses C#. There are plugins available for visual scripting, and there are lots of other, like I said, plugins in the asset store, but just know that with those options, they might cost a little bit more money, they might have different authors or different support, so make sure you're looking at how often they're being updated and how often the author is talking to the community that's using it. Yeah, lots of great features in this one. It's also important to note that if you make more than $100,000 on your game, first of all, congratulations, and also you will need to pay a yearly fee to Unity. And then finally, I'm going to talk about Unreal. So Unreal, very similar to Unity in a lot of ways, but one way that's different is that it uses C++ instead of C#, and it uses the blueprint system, which you can see right here. Blueprints are basically these blocks with lines. I've heard people call them noodles and all sorts of things like that. And they let you basically visually play out your logic for your game. And this is actually the way that I prefer to work in Unreal. I just think better with blocks and lines. I don't know why. And you can make a whole game easily with Blueprint without ever touching C++, which is really exciting and empowering for a lot of people. So that's definitely a big advantage here. This is also an engine that is focused on 3D. I think you could technically make a 2D game out of Unreal, but it's really not focused on that. It's well known for how powerful it is as a rendering engine, as a physics engine, and has a lot of really high-end features that make it a tool that's well used by indies, by professional game studios, and also in the film industry. And like Unity, there is also a lot of tutorials online, so you should be able to find the thing that you want to make with Unreal pretty easily. And last, I didn't actually forget about those of you that are wondering, but why don't I make my own game engine? And that's certainly a choice that you can make. Actually, a lot of AAA studios do make their own proprietary engine in-house because they don't want to pay a royalty to another company, and they know they're making a large franchise where they'll be using the same features over and over again. So this is something that you can consider. The pros of this approach are that you get to choose everything. You get to choose what language you make it in, your features, you get to keep all the money from your game, which is super great. But some of the cons are you are the tech support for your engine. So if anything goes wrong, you're going to have to be the one that's bug fixing it. And also it is much more time consuming. So in general, I suggest that this approach is appropriate for you if you are looking to learn skills for changing your career. If you want to prove that you are a great graphics engineer, a rendering engineer, physics engineer, that kind of thing. It always looks awesome on a resume to see that you have proven your skills in this way by doing something like making your own game engine. And this is also a good choice for you if you're making a really unique type of game and you think that other people will be interested in your game features later. You could think about that with that mindset from the beginning and license your engine to others at a later time, which could be really great for you. But I generally think that this is not a great option for you if you are looking to make your dream game, or if you are new to making games and you kind of want to get that little boost of confidence that comes from making a short project and finishing it, or have some other deadline in mind. In these cases, it's probably going to risk you losing steam or passion for your project before you even really get into the game development part of it. So I would recommend that you choose another person's game engine if that's you. All right, so in summary, for every game project that you make, I recommend that you know your goals for your project going into it and that you know the answer to these checklist items. If you are at that point and you've looked at these game engines and you're seeing that there are a top few contenders for you, then what I would recommend is to pick a small bit of your game, something like one feature or one level that you're really interested in doing or you think is really representative of what you want to accomplish. And once you've decided on that, take a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days per engine, and just try each of them out and see how they feel. See which one feels right for you, which one you think you enjoy working in the most. Another thing that's really good to keep in mind is to talk to your teammates. If most people on your team are already familiar with one engine, that may be enough for you to pick it over another because you're going to save a lot of time. Just, not having to worry about like teaching everybody something new could really be great for you. And, I didn't write this on the slide, but it was something I was thinking about. It's also good to know, like, if you're planning on making many games in the same genre, or you've already made one and you're building on it, that's another reason why you might want to prioritize one engine over another, because you're already familiar with it, you've already built a code base for it, so you're going to be saving time. And don't be afraid to make small projects, prototypes, or game jams to try new engines out. For more information, you can always hang out with me in my stream. I stream game development every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and I'm also on Twitter. Both places I'm known as Dr. Mikachu. And we're actually doing our own jam starting tomorrow on Itch.io, and it's called Credits Jam. This is an idea that came from our chat that we thought was kind of fun, and now we're doing it for real. So the idea is that you would make a credit screen instead of making a game, and just try to make the most fun credit screen you can, including having interactive elements in it. So it's a great choice for you if you want to try to play with one of these game engines that we talked about. And if you want to discover new options, Wikipedia has a nice list of game engines, and there's also a lot of them listed on Itch.io that are made by creators. Good luck to you. Thank you for listening. I'll be jumping in chat now to say hi. And now back to our host, Liz.